In a world filled with challenges and opportunities, it's not just about having big dreams, it's about having the right approach to turn those dreams into reality. Whether you're navigating the competitive landscape of business or seeking personal growth, it's all about the approach.
Welcome, everybody, to our latest episode of The Approach. I am your host, Dr. Davis McAllister, and we call this show The Approach because when I worked in the military, our success depended on the right approach. On this show, we discuss leadership, problem solving, and the approaches that have made our guests successful. My guest today is Aaron Hill of Synergy Coaching from Barcelona, Spain. Aaron served with the Royal Marines and UK Special Forces before becoming a coach. He guides high performers, including actors, executives, and Olympic hopefuls, to unlock their truth, cultivate resilience, and drive purposeful impact. He draws from a lifetime of leadership and personal transformation. He creates space for clients to walk their own path and seek success on their terms. As a father and husband in Barcelona, Aaron's mission is to change the world one conversation at a time. Let's welcome Aaron Hill. Welcome, Aaron.
Thanks. Pleasure to be here. Quite an introduction. Thank you.
I try to make it dramatic.
You got me pumped. I'm looking forward to this.
Share with the audience your background. You served in the UK, ended up in Spain. Give us an overview of your journey and background.
Yeah, no worries, mate. Pleasure to be here. Normally I give the stats and then talk about who I am, but I think I'm going to talk about who I am, then the stats. This is a first. Yeah, who I am is love and strength, powerful impact, and a beacon of courageous. I'm a catalyst for deep impact, powerful people, making the world a better place. Yeah. I happen to be called Aaron and live in Barcelona. What brought me here was my wife, who I met 20 years ago. I was serving in the military in the UK, in the Royal Marines, and I was in Special Forces then. After I finished my career, which was 10 years in total, 5 in both units, Royal Marines and then Special Forces, I made my way over here to Barcelona, where I've lived ever since, on and off.
Awesome. So you had some stats you wanted to share?
My units, where I live, and what I do for a living, which you've already covered. For me, it's a really interesting approach. As I'm learning more about myself, those stats are just things I happen to have done. I happen to be in Barcelona. You happen to be sat in Texas, but it doesn't make us who we are. I'm discovering who I am, and I felt compelled to share that as well as the few stats there.
Yeah. So could you share your experiences? The military is definitely a different culture compared to the civilian world. There's a lot of veterans that go through it. It doesn't matter what part of the world they're from. They all seem to go through that same process, that the military has a specific culture. You go through a change there to adapt to that culture. You spend time there. Then you have to go through an adaptation going back into the civilian world again. And I know all your focus is based on leadership. You're in the same talking realm that I am, where we talk about leadership and resiliency. Could you cover some events that shaped your ideas about leadership and problem solving and getting you to where you're at now?
I've learned more about myself in the last 5 years, so since I've been 40, than I have in the 40 years that have led up to it, through getting coached and being asked a lot of really quite uncomfortable questions and discovering who I am. But there's a lot of truth, gold, freedom, and peace in that. So it's a combination of lived experiences, but also recognizing certain qualities that I have in myself. Something that I'm really passionate about is spending time in nature, which helped me transition. I also went into the security industry with like-minded guys. Some had served in my unit, some hadn't. It wasn't a massive culture shock. Mountain biking in nature was a big help for me. That was my adrenaline, my excitement, and my disconnection from the military. And if I try and draw on one or two things, I think in terms of what's helped form my opinions around leadership is, again, going back and looking what's worked in the past, but also what mistakes I've made a lot more recently. For me, it's usually around fatherhood, learning why I'm approaching certain situations and trying to unravel that. Not necessarily criticize, but understand why I'm behaving a certain way. Many times it comes back to fear or resistance. That's quite applicable in a lot of the work that I do with my clients. There's lots of different layers, and underneath in certain areas we're quite similar.
Yeah. As I know, when I got out, I had gone through this transition. My transition was not an easy transition coming out. I had been in a unit that I was doing a lot of intel support for different groups and in particular operators, and trying to provide intel support for them, and had to run particular types of missions and those things. And then we ran one particular mission that was overseas, came back, and then a month and a half later, I was on a college campus going crazy because it was complete culture change. There was no time to adapt. There was no transition, and knowing what I probably would have taken more time to transition back, but I'm a hard charge and jump right into things. Going from that onto a college campus and being around a bunch of 18, 19-year-old kids, that it's a completely different perspective of the world. It was a hard adjustment for me. And I ended up having to I sought out other veterans on campus and actually organized an entire group of veterans to be able to meet the other. If I'm struggling, there's got to be other guys or gals that were struggling on the campus as well. So I would try to bring all of us together and meet. That was my therapy. Then I started playing college football. I walked on, ended up getting to play. So I was getting to knock heads with folks and not get in trouble for it.
It shows how important that community aspect is. And like you, I had that with work. And I was at that time working month away, month at home. So we do a month overseas after I transitioned out of the military. So I had that. And being active is really important. My identity was never wrapped around my job. I never felt good enough to be there. Mm-hmm. The exploration of that brought a lot up. But if I didn't feel good enough, then it wasn't the only thing that made me.
What led to that feeling that you didn't?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wouldn't have even recognized that until coaching, being asked questions and peeling back. What makes you think that? Where might that story come from? I had beliefs about myself formed in my own mind. It's just the way I saw the world. What that really looks like is quite an insecure young lad, always comparing to see where I'm stacking up. Am I better, good me, or am I under average, bad me? From childhood, even though nothing's really gone wrong, come from really loving, supporting background. I failed all my exams at school. I wasn't interested in being there. It wasn't a particularly inspirational place for me. So there's definitely, you can link it back to little things like that. But I also think it's the ability to walk into some really dark rooms and be guided into exploring those dark corners. It wasn't comfortable to stay away and brush it away.
Do you feel comfortable sharing what some of those challenges were for you?
Yeah, of course.
What were some of the things that you really had to deconstruct to help with those transitions you went through?
I think fear of failure was a big one, and it's still something that raises its head. The inner critic as well. I used to have a really loud inner critic that would find everything worth criticizing. It used to be really loud. But I've changed my beliefs and relationship with that sort of voice. Now they're really subtle. I understand that's a survival mechanism trying to look out for me. I can hear it, but I don't have to have it on max volume. I can accept it and live with it. I've got this. That was an inner critic, really harsh, not feeling good enough. The other one was fear of failure. That creeps up again in work, business, as a father, as a partner. But I don't see it as a problem. I see it as part of life, and I can learn when I walk into that and explore it. Just a small part. How much attention do I put on that?
Where do you feel that started to come in with a background in UK Special Forces? That's an accomplishment to achieve and operate in that space. And that brings a whole set of confidence for a lot of people. Where do you feel like that fear started creeping in with that kind of?
It would always have been there, but the question is, was I conscious of that or not? Probably not. I always felt compelled to show myself to the world, do difficult, dangerous, or at least challenging things. So Royal Marines, Special Forces, Ironman, mountain bike racing, always trying to push the things that I did so that I could be recognized. Yeah. So I wouldn't have caught this until I was given the opportunity to self-reflect. My coach, Johnny Bevan, held that space for me without judgment and got to ask me some really interesting questions. For me now, if I look at successful people in the military, sports, or business, that what they've achieved doesn't always impress me, because that can come from a place of need or trauma. I'm interested in the person, the connection, the energy they give off, the language they use, how they treat me, how they treat themselves.
When I talk about success principles, there's some different phases that I talk about when it comes to success that kind of aligns with what you're talking about. So you have people that will succeed because it's based on survival, and you have people that succeed for for the sake of success. You have people that will succeed for just trying to thrive, and then you have people that graduate to succeeding for a purpose. Did you find yourself going through something similar? Do you have a different way to describe it?
Yeah, it's a great way to describe it. I'm not an academic, so I haven't got lots of systems and taught knowledge to draw on. I've got my own. I've got my experiences, the courses I've done. But like I said, I'm not an academic, so my ability is to be able to look at somebody and ask questions from a place of curiosity without judgment taking over. It still does sometimes, but I can catch it and come back. All of what you said makes sense, and I can relate. It's a continual loop for me now. I'm working on what does that actually mean to me, and what I realize is it's a lot closer to home, more internal than external.
Yeah. I definitely relate to that. I looked at the phases I went through to compartmentalize. I went through a similar deal where I was trying to break down, why did I do this? Why did I have this kind of attitude? I went through phases of succeeding because I needed to survive. I was homeless at the time. Then I went through a period of succeeding for rebellion, just because if somebody told me I couldn't succeed, I'm going to do it just to spite you. Trying to get past that point where I'm not relating my success to somebody else. I'm succeeding because I want to succeed. And I went through a lot of emotional stuff, especially after I got out and started taking on a family and trying to process to where you can't treat your family like you do your people in the military. You're not your troops. You have to take a different approach, deconstruct the emotional component.
I can't do that work for myself all the time, which comes back to that community and support element that we touched on, the need good people around you to hold that space and help you draw out conclusions or insights.
Yeah. How integral was, because you said you met your wife while you were in the service, how much of an integral part has your wife helped in playing that part and trying to help you in that process?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. The military here in Spain, and especially Catalonia or Barcelona, where I live, is not seen in the same light that it might be in the UK or the States. She's been very supportive, but we might not be held in as high regard here. Incredibly supportive through whatever I do. She doesn't always understand or like it, but she'll always support me. We got married in the summer after 20 years of being together. It's pulling those people in that will support us, challenge us, and help us regardless of where we are in life. That's what I've found and what I'm clinging onto in her.
What is your overall approach to problem solving, whether it's something within your own life? I know you do some executive coaching as part of your synergy coaching, and we've always got a different approach to problem solving of how we look at it and break it down. Can you share your approach, your philosophy of problem solving, and where you formulated that idea from?
Yeah, my coach influenced me a lot, and I work with different coaches from different backgrounds to learn more about myself and what works for me and the people I work with. If I take a client as an example, one of the biggest things I do is be with them, sit next to them. I don't hold all the solutions. I listen to what they say, what they're not saying, what their body says compared to the words they use. For example, being able to separate myself from the thing. A couple of months ago, struggling for clients, it's really easy to get wrapped up in making it something mean about me. And I still get caught up in that because I want to do well. If I do X amount of clients, then I consider myself doing well. And when I don't, obviously the opposite. So it's stepping back, separating myself from that. Something that I've learned to do, which still comes as a challenge, is asking for help and support. And I think one of the biggest things recently is staying present, to step, as my coach puts it, just catch the story and notice when my brain runs off and tells me, oh, that means something. You're making this into this situational scenario. And really it's a lot of the times it's me, my fear, my insecurity or judgment of myself or someone else coming out to fruition. So that's really helped me to pause, separate myself from the problem and to try and stay present whilst asking for help and support from people that will either hold that space for me, know the answer, or see the problem quickly.
Yeah. I think a lot of times it's very hard this is one of those statements that I'm going to make, that it's easier said than done. It's very strong tendency, especially when you're dealing with business or you're self-employed. We tend to get married to the outcomes.
Yeah.
And we're so focused on the outcomes, which if you're self-employed, just being able to pay your bills and money coming in, that's what we get caught up in. And that generates more stress and discomfort. And we tend to be harder on ourselves rather than just focusing on the process and allow the outcomes to take care of themselves. It's very difficult. And it sounds like what you were alluding to is we want to bring on more clients and set our standards of success based on how much we're bringing in rather than just looking at the process and staying focused on that.
Yeah.
So what are some things you do to help you stay focused?
Looking at everything. What do I need? What do I like? What do I want? I need good sleep, good nutrition, good rest. I like connections, to speak to different types of people. It doesn't have to be about work, but to feel valued and connected. I have to generate that within myself, and being in the presence of other people helps remind me of that. I have non-negotiable things like 3 workouts a week to keep active. On Friday, my mountain biking day, I take Friday afternoons off to go. That's when the magic happens. I can enjoy the trails, especially the downhills. I had the insight the other day, I am already successful. I've got my health, time to use my bike, money to ride a bike, freedom to ride. I feel at peace, connected to nature. I'm coming home to people I love. For me, that's success. I'm already successful.
Yeah. I think a lot of people would love to get to that perception of success and have that peace, especially today. We're under a pressure cooker all the time, looking for the next client, the next thing to work on. I don't know about you. I have a tendency to keep taking on more things. I'm bad about drawing limits and saying, okay, this is where I need to stop and finish what I've been working on rather than taking on more projects. Do you find yourself doing that?
Yeah, of course. It's something we discussed. I've got times I will work up to, and I won't work after weekends. I won't work weekends unless it's an absolute emergency, because that's important time for me and my family. And we talked about this before. I'm not judging if you do that, but if that's a standard and it constantly gets knocked down, it can creep. I have problems with that. But that is why I continually speak to people. I have people hold me accountable, because I'm only human, and it's easy to default to more work, longer days, or more tasks to generate self-worth. That comes from me. It doesn't matter what I've done or what people call me. It's up to me to define that.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife, my safeguard, I have a tendency that I get wrapped up into something and I could keep working till 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. And it takes her sometimes coming in and just closing the computer, shutting the lights off, and said, "You're done for the night. And I don't care what you're working on. You're done."
It's great to have that. For me, I don't have that. I love my wife, but we're such different characters. She really wants me to succeed by her version of success. Another realization that I had recently was that different people have different roles for me. In that sense, she is not my gauge for where the boundaries in terms of work get set. She's got her standards, and I've got mine. I have different people that hold me to that and support me. And like I said, challenge me if I do start slipping.
And everybody's got a different structure. That's why I love bringing people on that have a little bit different process, so that somebody could help. Maybe it'll help somebody else find a system that works for them. Yeah,
Exactly. It's about trying, reflecting on what went well, what didn't, what did I learn. Your approach won't be the same approach for me. And if it does work, it only might work for this amount of time. So yeah, it's about learning and education. For me, that starts with learning and understanding myself.
I know for me, I'm going through a major transition. We have 5 children, and my youngest is a senior in high school. And so going off to college next year, my wife and I are going to be empty nesters. All we've known is parenting for almost 30 years. It's going to be a different transition. There's going to be a little bit of a void there, that because everything that we do is revolved around what our kids are doing, whatever sports they're in or activities. Helpful for me to stay focused and make sure that I'm cutting that time away to make sure that I'm present for everything that they're doing. And then once that's no longer there, now I've got to find a new fail safe to make sure that I'm drawing those lines. It may put more pressure on my wife to have to do that.
Probably, but that's the way it works, isn't it? Something that I do is I write out each evening what I've got the next day. I've got Google Calendar, but I write in ink. That helps us as well as a quick review of the day. What went well, what didn't, what did I learn, what could I improve next day. It's a nice way to close out the day, set boundaries. If I have to get this done, I build it in. But people know that it doesn't get done on the night that my daughter is expecting me to pick her up from gymnastics practice, for example.
Yeah. Walk us through what type of clients do you look for when you're doing your coaching?
I like driven people, high performers that feel slightly stuck or lost. They've either been grinding on their project or their business and feeling a bit disillusioned by it, or they've got a big aspirational goal that they want to go for, and which sounded cool once upon a time, but now seem daunting. They're reflections of myself, driven, but usually from a place of insecurity. Very sensitive people I connect to, more importantly. I've had some really interesting clients. I've had some people that I've connected really well to and others that I haven't. And I recognize that when I've taken on clients that I haven't connected to, I don't serve them in the same way that I do when I've got people that I really connect to. So it's much more a psychographic than a demographic that I'm looking for. I do love it when it's aspirational that they're going for rather than remedial coaching. They've got a big project, task, business, race, or dream. Let's make it happen. How do we get out of our own way?
Yeah. What's one of the most challenging clients or cases you've encountered?
Yeah, that's really easy to say. It's probably the first one. I'd not long left a personal training industry where the wage is rock bottom. I recognize coaching has a lot more value to it. So I had to triple my prices from personal training standards, and it was in my second and third language. I was grateful because as soon as this woman signed up, I used that money to get a coach. I didn't see any profit from that because I recognized the biggest limit is sat in this chair covered by books next to him. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity. It was a challenge because I wasn't present. I was thinking, is she liking the questions I'm asking? Am I having effect? I was focused on me and what I was feeling and experiencing rather than her. Being coached was brilliant. And the reason that she came to me, we succeeded. And then we started to find lots of other things that she would have probably been better suited to find, some counseling or therapy. In the end, I let her go as well, which is a very difficult and uncomfortable conversation. It would have been easy to take the money, especially at the time. That was a challenge because it's so new, different language. And in the end, I had to let her go. It's very gently done. I could have done it better, but I did the best I could in that moment. From a place of love, I believe you need this. I've helped you as far as I can. It's time to get somebody else to support you.
That's hard. One of my jobs is I work with patients, and sometimes I have a client that comes in and I've got to be willing to say, I'm probably not the best person for this case and refer them to somebody else that is going to be able to be better for them, knowing that you really need the money or you've got bills looming, but having that ethics to be able to say, what I'm focusing on what's best for you, not me.
Yeah. It takes practice. I've made mistakes, great lessons.
Yeah. So within your industry or in the military after, what is something that you feel like has required a very unique approach that may be different than what other people may have encountered?
If I compare the military, it was very action orientated. So there's always, especially at my level, I wasn't particularly senior. I only did 10 years. So if there's a problem, there was a physical thing to do. In my job now, there's nothing physical to be done. All that discomfort, it's learning how to process and allow rather than expel that energy through action. That's probably one of the biggest things. It's understanding emotions, understanding the response. Sometimes we can try and trace it back to why and where, but I'm not a therapist and that's not my job. It's forward looking. What's the next step to get you closer to where you want to go? It's communicating feelings and emotions, which is new for a lot of people. Man, nobody teaches this stuff and it can feel overwhelming because a lot of stuff we just push down. So that's a very different way approaching it. And this doesn't have to be done in front of everybody. It's finding the safe space or that level of trust or connection to do that. That's probably the biggest difference with my clients now. They want to push on, do more and more, whereas now it's to pause, slow down, realize what's going on for them, ask if this is actually serving me or not. Sometimes it isn't.
No. Do you have any cool stories or things that are really impactful, either in the military or enjoyable, eye-opening, or made a huge impact on who you are?
Yeah. The stories I speak about, the stuff I've worked through in coaching, the two biggest stories. One was wetting myself on stage in front of the whole school and their parents at 9, 10 years of age, which had a massive effect on me in terms of wanting to stand up and speak in public. So there's a lot of stuff that I've had to work through. Yeah. My heart still races and I get desperate for the bathroom every time just before I speak. But it's that opportunity to question that I am an adult. I can stop and walk out to the bathroom before. Whereas as that 9-year-old, I wasn't allowed to. You had to be on stage. You had to do this, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It's not really cool, but that is definitely something that's really uncomfortable to unpack. I realized I was dragging a lot of baggage around with me. A kind of cool story was one in the military. A firefight that we got into when I was in special forces. I felt I didn't react in the way that I should have in that moment, or that we normally train for. Without going into too much detail for lots of different reasons, I heaped a lot of blame and judgment on myself and almost branded myself as a coward. I wrote about this on LinkedIn in some depth. And again, it's just an opportunity. My lessons there was I can't change the past, but I can change my perception of myself. I recognize now I wasn't a coward. I was a young lad who had a very normal human reaction to a high stress event. And that was very liberating. You can see how fear of public speaking and avoiding standing up in front of people or being challenged would come so naturally because I've got these things that have happened, but I don't have to let that control me. So yeah, those are probably the two biggest things. Maybe I should get some cool stories to talk about rather than wet myself and all running away. But
hey,
I'm good with that.
Everybody's got an impact, something that happened to them. I mean, when I was I was tested for mental retardation. Back then, they didn't diagnose AD or ADHD. It was either you're a good kid or a bad kid. Constantly moving around because of my inability to focus, I had a hard time learning. It took training and internal processing to channel that and focus better. To be 6 years old and being told that you're mentally retarded has an effect after a while. It was my experiences in the military that helped me get over a lot of those things, rectify some of the failures from when I was younger.
Yeah, talking of kids, there's one of mine creeping in the background.
Oh, yeah.
You can carry on.
Yeah, if mine come creeping in the background, we got a problem. Mine are adults.
I know, that's why I'm laughing, yeah.
If you were wanting to give a message to everybody, what would that be?
I think there's two sort of strands to this. And one is that one of the lessons that I've learned and that I try and communicate in different ways to different people is that, yeah, you are enough already. Nothing you have to do or achieve, you already are. I know that can sound quite woo or hippie talk. What that might look like is questioning the inner critic. Is that actually true? Have you messed up? Are you completely useless? It's just learning to turn the volume down on that voice. That'd be one strand of it, really. One of my biggest lessons.
Imposter syndrome. It's that question of, am I good enough to be doing this? Do I have the credentials or the experience to be able to stand up in front of other people and tell them what they need to do, whether it's from leadership standpoint or something about their lives in general?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting point. I'll just expand on that then, because you've triggered a memory for me. So yeah, a long time would I felt I was good enough? No, probably not. Exploring that helped me see if I'm not an academic, that's fine. I don't have to pretend to be. I've lost my train of thought now. Ron Burgundy's popped into my head.
Yeah. We were talking about imposter syndrome.
If it is to speak, I'm not preaching a specific formula for life, just speaking what's true and relevant for me. It's to talk about my standpoint, what I'm experiencing, what works for me and the people that I interact with. I don't have to be seen as right or wrong. That's a great realization about being good enough, speaking the truth, being enough, or an imposter.
If you would share how everybody can get in touch with you and the best way to reach you if they want to get in contact with you about becoming a client and having you coach them.
Yeah, probably the best places where we met, Davis, and that would be through LinkedIn. I'm most active there. Just send me a message. It doesn't have to be just to become a client. I'm all about building relationships. And if that connection and feeling is great, we can start conversations. Sometimes they become clients, sometimes they don't. It's all good. Reach out. The biggest thing for me as a 45-year-old man, the most challenging thing is asking for help and support, but it's one of the most rewarding things I've done, learning more about myself and how I show up in the world.
Yeah. Look for Aaron Hill on LinkedIn. Reach out and allow him to share his experiences to help you through some challenges. Until next time, come back and see our next episode of The Approach.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Approach. If you would like to be a guest or for Dr. McAllister to speak at your business or event, you can email info@drdavismcallister.com. You can also go to his website at drdavismcallister.com.